Hi everyone, welcome to Trek Trav. I am Trav, and obviously today we're discussing Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 3, and tomorrow. Make sure that you go and watch the episode and then come back, because this will have spoilers. I don't tell you the story of the episode, but I talk about everything. So I have notes for this one because there's so much in it that I really liked, and also things I want to cover. So this video might be longer than normal. So first thing I want to talk about is the opening scene. So obviously we get a time agent falls and gets pulled into a different timeline where Captain Kirk is in command of the Enterprise. Now, obviously I want to talk about first thing, Paul Wesley, who plays the new Captain Kirk. He's a bit more serious. He's a bit more like Kirk in TOS, not like Chris Pine in the Kelvin films, and not like William Shatner. He has a little bit of the charm, but very much like Kirk in the original series. A bit more serious, takes himself a bit more seriously. So I don't mind the actor. I do think that he's a bit slim. I think that William Shatner in the TOS he was a bigger guy, like, I wouldn't say like me, but had a structure of a body that wasn't thin, spindly. He was a stocky guy. And Chris Pine kind of had a charm, a whimsicalness about him that was sort of, you were distracted by the fact that he was a really good, charming actor. Now, throughout this episode, and what I was really surprised by, was the love story between La'an and Kirk. Or I say love story, I mean, it gets to the point where they kiss. And I thought it might happen, but it was really good. I liked the fact that the episode begins with La'an not feeling connected to anyone because she's security, and she can't really get too close to people. But when she enters this other world, she almost lets her guards down with Kirk. I suppose because it's a fish out of water thing. She's not really in charge. He's not really in charge. He has no interest in resetting the timeline because he doesn't want it to be destroyed. And I get that. It makes sense. Until La'an mentions Sam and the fact that Sam's still alive in her timeline, and then he sort of flips. The whole story is interlaced with some really interesting things. There's a bombing in Toronto. I love the fact that they just went Toronto. They didn't try to pretend it was San Francisco or New York. They just went straight out. This is Toronto, Canada. This is a bridge. It gets destroyed. And they very carefully don't place this in any specific year. Which is interesting because that's what they've kind of been doing with the whole plot in regards to the early 21st century, late 20th century, is making it a little bit more muddied so that way later on they don't have to really change too much. So we get obvious mentions. We get a geeky girl who appears using a Canon camera, nice product placement. And she's really charming. She's kind of like the Sarah Silverman character in Future's End in Voyager. She's a bit geeky, she's obsessed with aliens, she shows them pictures of aliens, and Kirk recognizes a Romulan ship, which makes sense because obviously La'an hasn't seen a Romulan ship because the Romulans in the Prime timeline don't get actually seen until Kirk. I don't know why they keep bringing back the Romulans. I get that there's this weird obsession within the creators of Star Trek to talk about the Romulans. I don't know what it is. So the episode's interesting. The way they get money, Kirk goes and plays chess and earns money that way. Obviously he plays three-dimensional chess in his future, so he gets the money. And I thought that was really good because obviously you've only got an hour. So him getting the money was really good, and then him getting the hot dogs and sort of telling her to seize the day. He sort of has, Paul Wesley brings out a certain charm, but it's a much more sultry form of sort of charm. And I really enjoyed that. I don't think he's my favorite Kirk. I think William Shatner in the movies, and I think Chris Pine was a damn good Kirk. But Paul Wesley's doing a great job. in the same way that Ethan Peck is doing a great job, although he's not the same as Leonard Nimoy and Zachary Quinto. I think that there's some amazing stuff going on here. We obviously get Pelia at the beginning stealing the art, and I'm literally just looking at my phone. So Pelia's stolen art, and it says the archaeology department. We find out later that Pelia runs a shop called the archaeology department because she's selling off things, rare things, because Pelia's been on Earth for thousands of years. What I find interesting with Pelia is she's a lanthanite, and I don't know why you wouldn't use a Lorian. And my only reason for that, the only reason I can think that they haven't used an Elorian is, A, it gives them the freedom of talking about the species in a new and any way they want. So it gives them that freedom. But also, generally what happens is in these stories, if you create an alien or a species, you have to pay the original creator for that alien. So in this case, I imagine the Elorians are owned by whoever wrote Guinan in that first episode, or the first time she mentions that she's an Elorian, he would have to get rights. So I'm gathering that's why Pelia is a lanthanite. She's really good though. Like, honestly, I just can't get over the fact that it's Granny from the Addams Family. Every time she talks, I'm like, what? There's a really interesting dynamic going on where La'an opens up and she talks about things with Kirk, and you can see that she's longing for that connection. And Kirk, to be honest, without Spock in his timeline, probably is yearning for that connection as well because he's a Starfleet captain. It's a really interesting dynamic that they're playing. In terms of the story of the Romulan informant, which is the geeky girl from the beginning, I don't even remember her name, it's actually Romulan informant. We find out that she's there to change the timeline so that Khan Noonien Singh is dead. That Khan, the Khan. And we finally get a South Asian Khan as a young boy who's a South Asian actor. He's not, like, obviously Ricardo Montalban is the definitive Khan, but we're not getting a Benedict Cumberbatch scenario where it's a white dude playing a guy who was South Asian and Sikh. And I loved that. I thought finally, there was some great stuff in this episode. In terms of how this affects the Star Trek universe, this is what I found interesting. So obviously the Romulan spy says this.
Romulans lose their greatest adversary. But so many people have tried to influence these events, or to delay them, or stop them. Whole temporal wars have been fought over them. And it's almost as if time itself is pushing back, and events reinsert themselves, and all this was supposed to happen back in 1992, and I've been trapped here for 30 years trying to get my shot at him. I'm not going to stop now, so open the door.
So basically what that means is that any time we've seen temporal problems, time travel, stuff like that, it has altered the universe on some level. So it means that technically you have to watch Star Trek in creation order, not in chronological order, because obviously the influences of previous Trek affects future Trek. And I thought, man, that's really, really good. It means that although those shows are amazing, it kind of makes them all one show in that you're not going to get the same thing every time. And I think they're going to use this primarily with Gorn. They mentioned, one of the creators, that they did use Khan Noonien Singh in the very first episode of Strange New Worlds. They mentioned the eugenics wars before World War III. So it's already been established that. They also, in the end of Picard Season 2, they had Soong pick up a Khan project folder. So we've had hints at that. My biggest question, to be honest, is why haven't they made a eugenics wars show? You have the template, you have the eugenics wars books, you have everything you need. Gary Seven or the Travelers, just someone who can go and oversee this thing. And every series is hinting at the eugenics wars being this giant big thing, but we've never seen the eugenics wars. And that's what I find the craziest, is it's literally written in the TV series. It's just amazing. It's a big thing for what it means to Star Trek. I do like, I'm looking at my phone because I need things. So La'an feels, so Kirk, when she says her name, doesn't know what Noonien Singh is, because obviously the timeline's been altered. And that freedom in La'an's face is beautiful. So the whole episode deals with her breaking down the layers that she's built up because of her history and because of the past of her family. And Kirk basically knocks down those boundaries because he doesn't look at her and judge her by her family's history. He doesn't look, like, it's really interesting. And I really enjoyed it. So, the next big thing is do you go back in time and kill Hitler as a baby? And in Deadpool, yes he does. But in this, and I'm glad that it wasn't a question. I'm glad that it was no, Khan needs to exist, you can't kill him. And I would say it's as relevant within the Star Trek universe as it is within the actual storyline, in that Khan is such a pivotal bad guy that no other bad guy has really come close. The Borg Queen is close, but I say she got tempered by the fact that she kept being brought back. And the fact that La'an sees him, and that's why I get why they chose a child. Because if he was like a teenager or a young adult, you'd sort of go, why don't you kill him? But it's a kid, so you feel empathy. Because this is a kid. He's got drawings on the wall. He's got games everywhere. Like, you get that. And La'an clearly does it. She says, you're just a boy. And it's interesting when she gets back and she's questioned by the time agent. And she goes, you made me let a mass murderer live. You like, and the woman's going, well, that's the way it has to be in order to get the future that you want. This is one of those episodes. It is a great episode, not the greatest time travel episode, but the most fun. But there's a lot of stuff in here that really resonates throughout the whole Star Trek universe. It's really quite amazing. I'm just going to look at my phone again because when Kirk dies, so Kirk gets killed by the Romulan spy before they enter the building, and it's very quick. Bang, he's dead. And that guttural sort of crying, like she sees Kirk dying, she's just like, whoa. And you sort of sit there and you go, if this was Michael Burnham's situation, and this sounds really weird, it shows the juxtaposition between female characters. Michael Burnham probably would have broke down there and then. La'an, from what we've seen in the past, what we see in this episode, holds things in. So when we get to the end of the episode and she's talking to the Time Lady and then she contacts Kirk in the Prime Universe, and then she sort of, as soon as she puts that call down, she bursts into tears on her bed because she doesn't. She holds everything close. She holds her feelings close. And the biggest thing about this episode is the trauma of your history and the isolation that sometimes people put themselves in. It was by far the most layered episode of Trek that I've seen from current Trek. It is a really layered episode, and I haven't seen a new Trek, especially Strange New Worlds, a new layered episode. Usually they have the A plot, the B plot, maybe a C plot. That's the way it goes. This was time travel, consequences of time travel. Do you kill Hitler paradox? The dealing with the emotional damage of opening up to someone finally only to have them taken away. It was such a big episode. We obviously didn't get much of the other crew, and Pelia is obviously there. A lot of people on TikTok talking about, well, who does La'an talk to? Because the Time Lady says, don't tell anyone, don't talk to anyone. And I was like, no, you talk to Pelia. Pelia was in the past, she obviously would have understood, so it happens in Doctor Who a bit, but obviously she can talk to Pelia about these things, or at least Pelia knows about these things. And you see that in the recognition on her face. So I hope that maybe there's a bond developed between La'an and Pelia. I'm glad. I do kind of get annoyed at the fact that whenever they bring Paul Wesley in as Kirk, it's an alternate timeline, or like it's sort of a cheap way to get Kirk in there. It's like, you don't need Kirk in there. Like, I get that the fans go, oh my god, but you don't need Kirk in there at all. Although him knowing the Romulans was important, but you could have taken anyone from that universe. This was by far I reckon, the best episode of this season, just because it went on so many layers. It emotionally made you feel things. I loved the fact that there was a car chase in the middle. I love the fact that they had Vermont taxis, and I'm sorry, is there a brand of taxi called Vermont taxis? Because that's a terrible name. But it was a really great episode. I want to know what you think. Write it in the comments. Tell me what you think about La'an and how she is progressing as a character, because I think this one nailed it. I wanted to know more about that character. We did. Like, comment, subscribe, and come back for more on Trek Trav this Thursday for Strange New Worlds episode 4.
My real name is La'an Noonien Singh.